Hello, everybody. As you come on in, thank you so much for joining us on this fine Wednesday afternoon. At this point, 3 o'clock. Yeah, we can officially say Wednesday afternoon for all of Canada. I want to thank everybody with Royal LePage for tuning in today on this session. I'm very excited to have Michael with us today. Michael, how you doing?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you very much for having me. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing well. We tried to, like I just said, we tried to play a little bit of yin and yang. You can see this is, we have post like COVID recovery and we have still like in the depths of it, in the dark, dingy
Well,
basement.
don't sell yourself short, but yeah, you got to get some. You might have to get some more highlights in there or something, man.
Well, yeah, anyways, all right. I won't
Yeah.
complain about it.
Okay.
While you guys are checking in, if you could just do me a favor and in the chat, just switch it to all panelists and attendees and say a quick hello to everybody. And let us know where you're from. I always love seeing that. Love sharing that with our panelists. It helps us feel like we're here with live people because as we know, we've been on so many webinars these past few months, and it's great to see that we're here and there's actual human beings with us. And so
Yeah.
you can see, I mean, as you see the people coming in, we got a lot of Montreal coming in, which is really exciting. A couple Winnipeg people decided that they would listen in on you, so watch out. Maybe they're competing.
Fantastic. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's great. Yeah. No, this is cool. This is great.
Yeah,
Seeing
Calgary.
everyone. I wish I did. I apologize. I don't speak any French, so I know a couple curse words, and that's all I got. So
That's okay. It benefits you. When I was out in Winnipeg last spring, I got a lot of heat from Portage La Prairie because I can only say Portage La Prairie, and I was like, guys, like you're really making it hard on me, and they just laughed and laughed. They had a great time at my expense, which is okay. That's
I believe.
part of my job. So, looking at where we got Vancouver Island, Parksville, Trinity, Collingwood, up a little bit north of Toronto, a couple hours north, Mississauga, Calgary, a number of people from Calgary in here, Burleigh Falls, Ontario. I don't know where that is at all. Some Ottawa, a lot of Parksville today, Markham. So thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in. And thanks so much for letting us know. Like I said, it helps Michael and I feel like there's somebody here live with us. And, I am so excited for today's webinar because, as we're kind of, as we said, the yin and the yang stuck in my basement here in the dark. And Michael's not, look at that haircut. Look at the hair. Feel free to comment about the hair because it looks fantastic. Okay.
All
He
right.
said it doesn't. It's
I
a
love you.
backup barber, but it looks great.
Thanks.
But as you guys start and the businesses, see, look, looking good, looking good.
Okay.
As businesses is moving, and we were just discussing the recovery in Winnipeg, but the idea of stop pricing homes and get listings that sell. I've noticed a big shift in the mindset of agents moving away from this idea of this COVID, like, oh my God, to like, hey, I got to get business going again. I gotta hone my game. I got to make sure I'm the best realtor out there because competition is fierce right now. And I know Michael, so you guys know a little background on him, managing broker of Royal LePage Prime Real Estate out in Winnipeg, Manitoba. He's also a second generation realtor, so he's got a lot of experience from every and from the kind of the old school way, the traditional, to the new school way. And I'll say Michael was on the Services Advisory Council a few years ago, and every time he spoke, he always had such valuable insight. He did a few presentations actually for the Services Advisory Council that were really beneficial. When he became a realtor, he quickly became an award-winning agent for 7 straight years. And eventually he transitioned into a leadership role. And his focus is really on helping his agents increase their efficiency and effectiveness by becoming a lot more strategic and focused. The approach that he's taken to lead in his brokerage has led to his brokerage growing by over 60% and has increased the productivity per agent by over 35%. And that's in only 5 years. So that's why I am so personally excited to be here with Michael and to learn from him. And with that said, I want to turn everything over to Michael so you can get this started.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the introduction, Mike. Flattered. Nobody really never had a comment on my hair before, other than that it's receding at a rapid pace. So that's usually the comments I get. So I appreciate to have one that's actually positive. And anyway, so I'm going to share my screen here. Oh, Mike, apparently you've disabled screen sharing.
Oh, sorry about that. Hold on a moment.
No
Let me
problem.
do that. And there you go. Now you should be able to do that.
Beauty. All right. Let's get this thing going. All right. So I want to thank again everyone for tuning in today. It's really an honor to be here and to be presenting across the entire LePage network. Again, I've been a part of the network for over 13 years now, and I just kind of keep falling in love over and over again with everybody. And again, really excited and appreciate you. Again, Mike and LePage head office for having me. And again, for anybody tuning in, really appreciate it. So I'm going to today's going to be a bit of an interesting webinar, I hope. This is something that I was telling Mike earlier. This is a presentation we do at our office, and it's usually in a bit of a role-playing format. And so I'm going to do the best job I can. When it's live in front of people, it's easy to do. I'm across the table from a fake seller, and then I'm able to kind of turn to the audience and talk to them as well. So I'm going to do the best job I can trying navigating kind of the role playing with speaking to you, the audience as well. So hopefully I don't get too clumsy with it, but I think we'll be okay because LePages are the best and brightest and smartest out there, right? So let's dive into some stuff. A bit of background. Mike gave me a better intro than the slide does. But one of the great things, I got to pump up my agents here at LePage Prime in Winnipeg. Over the since 2015, we went from number 7 in the city in sales to number 1 in the city. That just finished at the end of April in 2020 there. So we're really pumped about that. And so I got to give mad props to all my LePage Prime agents out there, and they love your referrals from across the country. Alrighty. Is there not a more ubiquitous term in this industry than free home evaluation, right? I would be curious if you could raise your hands, how many of you use free home evaluation on a bus bench, a billboard, a garbage can, or urinal cake, or whatever it is, right? Realtors love free home evaluations, or on their websites, find out what yours is worth, how much is your home worth, right? This is our big hook that realtors use over and over again. And so not that it's misguided, it's not that it's wrong, it's incredibly important, right? I think we know if we mess up a price or if the seller messes up a price, the listing is not going to sell, right? Pricing is extremely important. And so we can't really, diminish that value there of the importance of it. At the same time, I like taking words that we use all the time, right? Whether it's real estate or not, but we use terms all the time. And it's almost like this home evaluation, the value of my home, it's so everywhere. We're indoctrinated with it. We become impenetrable to what it actually means. And so we're really going to kind of deconstruct this notion of what an evaluation is, and hopefully going to give you a bit of a different perspective on this. And it should be a tool that will allow you to, at the end of the day, what I really want is it to be a tool for you to use and adapt into your own business, tweak it your own way, that will hopefully get you more sellable listings. Because who wants more sellable listings, right? Especially right now in Winnipeg, I think every one of my agents be batting down the door for another sellable listing. Our demand is going through the roof right now. There's multiple offers on almost everything that's for sale. It's getting a little crazy, and to be honest, it's really tough right now for buyer's agents. So we need more sellable listings. So a bit of background there. And this is one of the things that I find. One of 3 things can really happen when we get into this pricing presentation right now. So let's just pretend you go through your comparables, you're in front of you're in front of the sellers. You go through your comparables, however you do it. We'll probably talk more a bit about that later. But a few different scenarios are going to happen. One, you're going to present your price, and this might happen. Everyone agrees you're the best. You come in with whatever number it is, 500,000, and they go, "Oh my gosh, I was thinking it was worth 300. You were saying it's worth 5. You're amazing. Let's get this done. Where do I sign? Press hard 4 copies." And that's a great scenario. It doesn't happen all the time, but it certainly can happen, and it's wonderful when it does. Another one of these approaches happens, and this is probably the more common one that we see, is that there's a genuine little bit of a tug of war, right, between the seller and the listing agent. Maybe you disagree a little bit. They typically, they want it a little bit higher than we would like them to have it. And you have this little back and forth, a bit of a tug of war when it comes to where to price the home, which is fair. And hopefully you can come to an agreement and move on and get the listing sold. But I think this is probably the most common scenario is, hey, there's a bit of back and forth. When it's the back and forth, this is what always reminds me of sometimes, right? When you've been there when that seller wants to have, it's a little bit higher than what you'd like them to be at. It's kind of like a parent telling their kids, like, no, you can't have ice cream for breakfast because it's not good for you. you want to tell them, no, you can't list your home for that because you're crazy and no one's going to buy it. And I'm going to waste all my time, energy, and money on it. Right. And so sometimes you feel like that parent, you have to just, scold them, or you want to anyways, but you've got to come at it from a different perspective. But I think we've been there, right? Where we want to just take the sellers and bonk their heads together and say, you're nuts. So another scenario might happen where, hey, again, God forbid, but you might be shooting in the dark. And I'd be lying, I've been in the business, 13 years. Have I shot a couple blindfolded arrows out there? Yeah. Am I proud to admit it? No. But there might be some agents out there as well who go, man, this is a little tough. You'll know this is the case when your voice, the intonation goes up at the end when you're stating your price. Like, I think we should list it at $399. That's typically when you're taking a shot in the dark and you're not really that confident about pricing. But so no matter what kind of situation occurs, this is what I found happens a lot to realtors. And this is not just in my career and my own personal sales experience, but in coaching and working with our salespeople over the last number of years. One of the questions and things that I get thrown at me a lot is, man, if a listing's not selling, right, and the realtor really is owning the price, they're carrying the weight of their sellers, right? And if you have a lot of listings, if you're carrying a big inventory, there's no way you can actually go around carrying the weight of all these unsellable lists, or unsellable, of these unsold listings. But I just find realtors, they own the price so much. And if it's not selling, it's all their fault. And they go, why isn't it selling? What did I miss? And how did I screw this up? Now, one side, for every mile of road, there's 2 miles of ditch. On one ditch, yeah, you might not have had, all your ducks in a row. Maybe you did miss something. But most of the time, it's the market, it's the sellers, potentially, on their stubbornness. But I just want to help remove this weight off of realtors of owning this price and of owning, yeah, if it sells or not. And just, I want to lift that weight off them so they can go continue to do their job, sell more homes without being weighed down. And so this will happen even in the good and the bad. So if I can explain, back to the one scenario where you agree on everything, right? Let's say right now you could list the home. I'm speaking for Winnipeg. It's a good home, good neighborhood, well priced. It's going to fly off the shelf in multiple offers. And what do we do as realtors? We own it, right? Look how amazing I am. Look what I did. I got 27 offers and $65,000 over asking price. I am a god. I'm amazing at pricing. Yeah, no, you could duct tape a sign of the house and got 15 offers. So, but we own that in the good way too. And on the converse, when it doesn't maybe go the way we want, sometimes we own this as well, a little too much. So I'm going to try to free that up. Hopefully that's fair. So in order to do this, I want to offer a different perspective, right? And it's always, perspective is one of those things where everyone sees the same thing differently. And again, deconstructing this word of value, of worth, and of value, worth, and evaluation. So this is what's neat about this. I really find that this topic and this, hopefully the nuggets here that you take away, this is applicable in any market. Hot market, down market, luxury market, first time market. It doesn't matter. This concept will apply to any market, any jurisdiction in the world. This will apply. So it's not just for Winnipeg markets or hot markets, down markets. It kind of covers them all. So I got to give credit where credit is due. And I got to give credit to Jackie Leavenworth first. She is, some of you may have encountered Jackie over your years attending the NAR conference. That's where I originally met her. She's a real estate trainer, former broker and trainer down in the States. And she's from Cleveland. That's where she's from. She's from Cleveland. And we brought her in and she really gave the framework for a lot of what I'm talking about today. Dr. Cliff Barrett as well. We've had him in at our office at another time. And so I've kind of taken a lot of what both of them were saying. I kind of molded them together, put their own spin on it, and repackaged it for today's presentation and how we kind of deliver it to our agents here in LePage Prime. Don't you love the salesman repackage, right? Repackaging is just a salesman word for ripping off, but we're in sales, right? But anyways, I got to give credit where credit is due. These guys really made this happen, and they're both smarter and better than I am. So one of the baselines we need to establish here and again, this is one of these times over the next couple of minutes here, these baselines I'm establishing, I really talk to the vendor as well and establish these. And I'm going to get back to that in a sec, but I want to kind of rack your brain first and poke your brain, and then we'll talk about how we really rattle the cage of the seller a little bit. So this is one of the things that we kind of established already. Price equals worth equals value. These terms are all synonymous, right? What's the price of my home? What's my home worth? What's the value of my home? What's the valuation come in at? All kind of synonymous, right? These are the same things. So that's really important. And then so if price equals worth equals value, right? So what's my home worth? What's the definition of value, right? Because the definition of value means what my home is worth, and it also means what's the price. Hopefully that makes sense. It's all the same thing. So the definition of value, we know this, right? You're all realtors. You went to real estate school, and this is the definition of value. Long story short, this one was copied and pasted out of the internet somewhere, some site, I don't know what, but we know it's what a buyer is willing to pay in a reasonable market with a reasonable exposure to said market, right? Long and short of it, what somebody's willing to pay. We know that that's been established. That's what value means. So I'm curious right now, just a kind of a quick poll. So don't type in anything yet. And I think my face and stuff might be in the way there. But the question is, how do you present price to your sellers, right? So after you go through the comparables and all that kind of jazz, how do you present the price and what you think the price should be? There's kind of three ways. So I'd love if you could type into the chat which one of these three you use. And then if there's something a style that you use that's outside of one of these three, I'd love to hear it. But I find there's kind of three. One of them is, I call it the bold and the beautiful, right? This is the agent who comes in, they're walking tall, they're peacocking, nothing wrong with that. And they say, this is what's going to happen. Here's the price. The home is worth $199 and it's going to sell for between $199 and $220. And it's going to sell in 4 days with my marketing plan. It's going to be wonderful. So book a hotel. This thing's getting sold, right? And they come in and they say, this is the price. Here's my experience. I know what it is. This is the value of the home. Cool. Again, if that's a style you're rocking, all the more power to you. If it's working for you, great. Another style which I find when agents present is a low, medium, high, or some kind of a range that they'll give. It gives them a bit more wiggle room. It kind of creates a bit more dialogue with the sellers. Not that one's right or one's wrong, but this is just an approach that some people take. Another one is kind of, I call it a seller discovery, but it's sort of, well, sure, maybe. The voice intonation usually goes up. Let's give it a try. Let's see what happens. That is, again, not my personal favorite approach, but that is approach that some agents take, is a kind of a casual, well, what do you want to do? And let's sit there. Let's see what happens. They want to get the listing, avoid a little confrontation, put the sign in the ground. So I'm just curious right now, if I could take a look at the chat, which are some of what approach do you guys take?
So it looks like a lot of people here are hitting on the range, ballpark. Some people have said a little bit further, they like doing a lot of the term is that range. I like giving a range. And then,
right.
Catherine Balfour says 4, none of the above. So
Cool.
That would be one where, hey, let us know, like, what are you,
yeah.
Says we don't, we don't price a home. That's what we do. We just I don't know how,
Yeah, well, it's interesting because it's actually going to tie in quite well to what we're talking about. Somebody's picking up on this, and it's not going to be. Well, anyway, I'll kind of go on. But is there anything else? Any other numbers in there that are coming frequently? Mostly,
see a couple of ones. I saw one person say a 3, which I love it. And it says 3. Sorry to be honest, which is great. I mean, that's why we're here, right? Like we're here to learn, and Michael's going to share with us some scripts and, like you said, some dialogue that can be used to tighten this up, and like you said, a different approach.
Mm-hmm.
So
right. Okay, cool. So thanks for putting in your comments there. But again, there might be 4, 5, 6 different styles, different approaches for everyone. But that's just kind of the common trends that I see. And I've rocked them all. I've done them all. Depending, like there's some homes where you just know what it is, right? Like you've been in this home 1,000 times, or it's a condo project, and it's like you just sold the same unit next door. Not much of a range to give. It's pretty easy, etc. So anyways, they can vary.
I'll give you Catherine's number 4. She says, I asked the sellers how they think theirs compares value wise, and we come up with a price together, which is interesting, different.
Right. So that's, yeah. So that's what I call, I could have put in there what I call a seller discovery, which is you kind of give all the information, you throw the ball kind of to them. And it's a little bit of a combination of what we're going to talk about. We throw the ball to them and they say, you know, and they sort of plot it for you. And so you kind of, it helps alleviate some of that pressure of, hey, I didn't pick the price, you did. So it does parlay a little bit into what we're going to talk about, but that definitely is one. I call it the seller discovery. So, so thanks, Catherine, for sharing that one as well. So here's the interesting thing about when we talk about value. Again, remember, what's my home worth, price, we're talking value, all synonymous. So what a home is worth, there's only one moment in history, in time, when you know the true value of a home, right? Up until this moment, you're kind of guessing, right? You're kind of predicting what's going to happen, but you don't actually know the value of the home until one moment. And that moment is when title transfers. Now, depending on your province and your land titles system, Winnipeg I'm speaking for, that when you get the title issued, there is the name of who bought it, who sold it, the date that it transferred, and the consideration, or as in the price. It's recorded in time. It is timestamped. One moment in history. That's the value of the home. So that date, that person showed up and bought that, paid that much for the home. That's it. As an example, so that happens, boom, house, $300,000, paid for by the Joneses to the Smiths, 300 grand on June 11th. Is that today? June 10th. Well, what happens in 5 minutes later? What happens if they want to put their house up for sale again? What's the value? It's changed, right? It's changed. So there's only one moment in time. And so what do you actually need to know to determine value? You have to know, I'm not sure if you can move the heads around there, Mike, sorry, but it says there, who is the buyer? You have to know who the buyer is. You have to know what date the purchase occurred. You have to know the date, and you have to know the price. Without those three things, you actually don't know the value, okay? And I'm hoping I get a couple people head scratching. I hope a couple people are saying, what is this idiot talking about? I hope so, because I hate to break it to you, you don't actually know the value of a home. You don't. Nobody does. We can't. It's impossible because of the three things I mentioned. We don't know who's walking in the door. We don't know which buyer's buying it. We don't know what price they're offering and what price the seller's going to accept. We don't know the date. We don't know, right? And so this helps, this kind of just a different perspective, because I get it, two sides of the road and two sides of the two ditches, right? Yeah, we can't be completely oblivious and go, yeah, you're right, I don't have a hot clue. That's not what I'm talking about here. But to be able to, what I wanted to remove is the weight and the ownership of this price that we cling to so much, that we are the gatekeepers, that we know this price that's going to come, when you just don't. By definition, not by my opinion, by definition of value, what we're taught from day one, we don't know the value. And this is I thought this was a little bit funny, where the people say that I hate to break it to you, can't wait to break it to you. And you're right, I couldn't wait to break that to you. So we need to stop a few things. I want to stop some of the thinking about price. I want to stop you from saying the word price to your client, talking about the value of the home and the price of the home. We're going to try to change some of your vernacular, some of your vocabulary, so that it triggers into your brain as well, and that your presentation is all very congruent with this concept that, you know what, you actually don't know the price. Which again, I hope you're getting a little bit head scratchy. I hope you're getting a little offended, because that's the whole point of this, right? I don't want to tell you something you already know. So that parlays into a bit of a couple other baselines here on what our presentation to our sellers is going to look like. And this is one of the things, and why I kind of told you that you don't know. I hope that got your attention a little bit. And when we talk to the sellers about this, when we talk about pricing, we're going to actually stop saying pricing. We're going to use the word positioning, but I want you to get their attention. I want you to start telling stories. And the framework that I'm going to provide you yields to these two things: attention and storytelling. And I think we know a lot of the benefits of storytelling. You know, there's if Chris Pittman was watching, you know, he's got He's got background on the neurosciences and all that kind of stuff. There's neurocoupling and mirroring and dopamine effects and cortex activity. Cool. I'm a bit more of this style. If you watch The Office, so me think, why waste time, say lot word when few word do trick. That's me. So this is what I'm going to basically tell you. Storytelling is good. There's power in stories. And I know you've heard this before. And so the framework that I'm going to unravel for you is going to do a couple things there. It's going to get attention. It's going to have the seller's ears perk up. If you are the second agent, third agent, fourth, we're going to make them think a bit more, right? And we're going to lead with stories and really engage their part of the brain and engage the seller. So that's the framework we're going to be doing here. So this is my turn to flip the camera, because I want to just do a little bit of a quick role play here, or a bit of a script on what everything that I talked about up until now. I'm going to essentially tell the seller this. And so this is what it might sound like. Don't take this as, as gospel here.
Michael, did you want me, are you doing this to me or just to the audience?
I'm doing this to everybody right now. So,
okay.
But you know what? If you want to play along, Mike, I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see. If I need to jump in, I'm here, man.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'll say kind of at this point is I'm sitting down with the seller. Let's pretend I've gone on the tour, I've done all that stuff. I'll say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, now I understand we're at the part where you might want to know, you're expecting me to tell you what your home is worth, where I think the pricing might be. But here's the thing. There's a problem with that. I can't. I can't do this. And the idea here is, if I could do an aside to the agents here, the idea here is to, again, bring their attention a bit. And I want to look at their body posture and see if they perk up, or if they do kind of that sort of a thing. Like, what am I talking about?
Which is what I did.
I want to get them out of this, this blunt mindset. Realtors coming in, just tell me my price, tell me the price. So I want to get their brains knocked off a little bit here, right? So I'll say I can't do that. I'll say nobody can. I'll say any agent, if you've talked to their agent, or if anybody comes in here after me, or if you've talked to their agent and they tell you what your home is worth, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, they're flat out lying to you. They are lying to you. This is fake news. Right? I think more great words to use right now, fake news, with all the stuff going on. And I'll ask them, can I explain? Can I explain this? Before you kick me out of your house, can I please explain? And they'll say,
that was my first thought as well. I was like, all right, the guy who was here 10 minutes ago said he could. So
yeah, exactly. And so I'm hoping at this point they're a little curious of what's going on, and I'm hopefully I'm bringing them in here, right? And so I will go through what we just went through. I'll say, Mr. Missar, when you ask me about what you want to know what your house is worth, really what you're asking me is, what somebody's willing to pay for it. That's a definition of value. And I'll look around the house and I'll try to find something that maybe they have that they're close to it. If there's a guy's a golfer, if he's a car, or whatever it is, I'll bring in an analogy here. So as an example, I'll say something like, for instance, what's the value? You want to know the value of your home. How do we determine the value of anything, Mr. and Mrs. Seller? Take your car as an example. What's the value of your car?
For my car, I mean, I bought it at like 15,000. By now it's probably at 12 or 11.
Okay. So how would you find out that value? You could do a couple different ways, Mike. You could look into the black book. You could look online, do some research, and you could probably take a stab at, okay, here's what I think it might be worth. And then what you would have to do is advertise it. And let's just pretend, Mike, you said 11,000, right? So let's pretend you advertise the home for $11,000. What if nobody buys it? Is the value of your car 11,000?
I mean, I guess, and no, yeah, all right. I get what you're saying. Okay.
Right, yeah. So, right. So essentially, the value of your car is going to be determined by what a reasonable buyer is willing to pay for your car. Right. Yeah. So you can't tell me right now the exact value of your car. The same way I can't tell you right now the exact value of your home, because I don't know who's going to buy your home, Mike. I don't know on what date they're going to buy the home. And I don't know the exact offering that they're going to offer for your home. So we don't know any of those things. And so that's why I can't tell you value. And that's why nobody can tell you value. So unless you have a crystal ball and you can tell me those three things, nobody can tell you value. Does that make sense, Mr. and Mrs. Seller?
I get what you're saying. You're saying.
So this is where it gets, again, a little bit, they're usually leaning in right now. I'm just checking on my notes here. And what I'm going to tell them is this. I'm going to back to sharing my screen. This is the dialogue that I find is really helpful. Just gonna do this. It is this one right here. I can't price your home, as I mentioned. Nobody can. If somebody says they can, they're lying to you. In my experience, I've learned that it's my job to position your home on the market and execute a marketing plan that will achieve the best results for you and your family. Okay. Now you have to tailor this, of course, to the situation. If they don't have a family, or if they're an investor, or whatever it is. But there's a couple different words that I bolded there. Number one is in my experience. I try to use this word, these three magic words all the time, because when you use the words in my experience, you're subtly elevating yourself a little bit, right? You're subtly elevating yourself that you have experience in buying and selling real estate and they don't, right? And it speaks to, even matter if you have 4 days of experience, you can still say those words, in my 4 days, right? In my experience, this is what I've learned. And I find that was really powerful. And this is what I focus on. Once I say that, I say it's my job to position the home and get you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, the best results for your family. And I'm going to say, let me explain a little bit about what best results mean. And this is where we're going to start talking about some stories. One size does not fit all in this business. Results for you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, are different. Are the best results for you are different than the best results for somebody else. There's not a unifying thing on what good results means. Yes, usually means more money, less time, less headache. We know that shtick. But is it true that there are some sellers who are looking for that a quick sale is more important than the dollar? Is it true that there are some sellers out there who are looking for, man, if I could just get this thing with no showings and getting it gone, that would be beneficial? Or is there some sellers who would like, I need this number and I don't care what it takes and how long it takes, I need this number, right? There is not a one size fits all for exactly the results you want. And so this is important to relate to the seller, because I want them to feel that this is a marketing approach and my approach is custom made for them. That they're not just falling into my system, that they're not just, even though I get systems, I love them, that they're not just falling into systems, they're not just on their sale, but I'm taking care of them and what's best for their family. And so this is where I'm going to tell stories, right? I'm going to insert a story here. And so the story that I'll share with you is one that I would share with the sellers. And this is, again, a true story. And if you don't have your own story, borrow someone else's. You can steal this story that I'm about to tell you. Talk to people in your office. Get a story somewhere of that it can fit, but you've got to be able to tell stories. So the story that I tell first is it's a true story. And I'll tell Mr. and Mrs. Seller one time. Let me emphasize my point here. There's one time I went to a listing appointment. It was in Harborview South. I got along with the sellers very well. We kind of hit it off, and we more or less agreed to do business together. And the gentleman had said to me, Michael, I like you. I want you to list my home. I said, fantastic. Love, want to do that. And he said, here's the thing. I want it sold by the time you come home from the lake. We weren't at the lake. And so I asked, okay, well, when are you going to the lake and when are you coming back? This was Thursday night, Thursday evening appointment. The gentleman said, I'm coming back on Sunday. We're leaving tomorrow, back on Sunday. I want it sold by Sunday. Right? True story. And I said, okay. So I asked Mr. and Mrs. Seller here, where did we have to position the home on the market? What kind of a pricing strategy did we have to take here? I had 3 days to sell their home. We hadn't had it staged. We had nothing ready yet, but that was what was important to that seller. So what turns out is we had to take a bit of a more aggressive approach when it came to price. And turns out actually Friday evening, we got 2 offers, ended up selling for a really good price. We got it sold, all the contingencies removed by Sunday. We got it sold by the time the guy came home from the lake. Awesome story, right? I love that story. But what it displays to the sellers is that that's what was important to that particular seller. Could I have got them more money with a full marketing plan, full exposure? Absolutely. But it wasn't important to them. They wanted the results of sold by Sunday. So we had to position the home on the market differently for their results that they wanted. Hopefully that makes sense. And so another story that I'll tell is I've had a client before who had a number in mind, and that number that they had, that allowed them, it paid off debt. It did all kinds of things. It was a little bit higher. It wasn't so crazy, but it was a little bit higher. And they kind of said, I don't care how long this thing takes. And so we had to do the whole, we took a long time. We waited for the market to catch up. We ended up finding a buyer. It took a little bit longer than normal, but we got the number that the seller really needed. So everyone's in different places. some things are important to others that aren't to the next person. So we can't have this one size fits all mentality. And so that's where here again, insert a story about a particular situation where you had to price a home or position a home more aggressively to fit the narrative that you want to fit here. Hopefully that makes sense. I know I bounced in and out of dialogue there.
We do have one question on it in terms of
Yeah.
saying like how you tackle the situation. And I'm asking this question solely because it comes right off of what you were just saying.
Yeah.
But the question is how you tackle the situation when the seller has already made his mind to list at X price, that you're not comfortable with his number. So, you talked in here a story about somebody where the price, but obviously at the same time you said, hey, we're going to have to do a little bit of a harder marketing push. There's a little bit more time. It might take a little bit longer, but what do we do in the case where the selling price is like just completely out of whack?
So I'm going to get to that if
Okay.
that's okay. And I'll definitely be answering that. So I appreciate the question though.
Yeah.
So really again, during this presentation right now, if I'm imagining myself in front of the sellers, I'm really setting them up here. I'm really laying the background for when I'm gonna swing for the fences and bring it all home here. I promise it's coming. Right, and so this is a great point. We have to position each home differently on the market based on what's important to you. And again, what's the key word here, and I even trip up over this. It takes time. Is using the word position instead of price. I don't say we have to price the home, because we can't price it. Remember, we can't price it. So I'm going to try to stop using the word price. I'm going to use the word position. We have to position the home differently based on what's important to you, right? And then we have, of course, you should have had discussions previous to this about what's important to them. So I just want to do a quick little recap. So far, what we've done is we've captured their attention. We've included the seller in the discussion, and we've started to differentiate a bit from competitors, because at this stage, most likely the other competitor, if they've had somebody in, has not said what I've said so far. I have not said that I can't tell them price. I've tried to separate myself a little bit, that I'm a little different than all the other people out there. I'm trying to separate myself from all the other flyers and bus benches and urinal cakes that they're seeing every day, right? And we've subtly conveyed confidence and expertise because we've told stories, we've used words like "in my experience," and we've subtly conveyed that, hey, this guy knows what he's doing, right? I didn't read the back of a milk carton and come up with this stuff. Hopefully that makes sense. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Quick little framework. All right, then we get into the meat of it here. So this is the pricing pyramid. I think every realtor has seen this, right? And so this is one that we take off of Keystone Matrix, and I put this in my presentation. Now, typically I pull this out and I will take a pen and I will write directly on this thing. So I can't do that on the screen right now, so I have it loaded up here. My handwriting is a lot worse than what you're about to see. So what I'll tell Mr. and Mrs. Seller, what I've found in my experience, what I've found is that there's 3 zones that we can position your home in, right? Because that's my job, positioning the home for your best results. So there's 3 different zones we can position the home. The first zone is up here, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, and this is what I call the curious zone. The curious zone is where you start getting people, maybe there are new entrants into the marketplace. Maybe there's some tire kickers involved. Maybe there's neighbors into this. But people are going to see the marketing of the home because the home is beautiful. We're going to make it look beautiful. The marketing is going to be excellent. And people are going to come into the home because they're curious about the price. They're curious about, I wonder, why is this home so nice? I'm wondering, why does the price fit the pictures, right? And so this is sometimes where we also attract what we call in the business shoppers, not buyers, where people are just starting their search or they're interested. Again, they're curious, right? Does that zone make sense, Mr. and Mrs. Seller? And they'll usually say, yes, makes sense. And then I go into the pros and cons. Very Benjamin Franklin here, and I'll say, let's talk about the curious zone, pros and cons, right? And I'll lay them out for you, right? And these are ones every realtor knows, the cons to having it on the high end of the scale here. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, it takes longer to sell, right? The current average days on market in your neighborhood is 12, right? If we start hitting the 30 days on market, 40 days on market, what does a buyer naturally think? These are questions we're very familiar with, right? I think we all know how to do these, right? And they know the downsides, right? People start thinking, what's wrong with the house? There's nothing wrong with the house. It's beautiful, but our positioning in the market makes people curious about potentially what's wrong with it if they see it going beyond the averages, right? Mr. and Mrs. Seller, this is where we start to see lowball offers. Think about it. You're gonna have to buy a home, right? If you saw a home that was listed for sale and it was on the market for 30 days when everything else sells in 10, Are you going to come in with a full price offer? You're not, right? And they'll usually say, no, why would I? Right? They're going to come in with lowball offers. They're going to show the house. They're going to show it when it's convenient for them, right? If you're in the curious zone, people are going to come when it's convenient for them. Hey, guess what? You know, this got canceled tonight. I got nothing to do. Maybe I'll go look at that home I've been looking at, right? You're going to get these curious buyers who show it when it's convenient for them. This is the biggest one. I really emphasize this point with the sellers. You lose leverage. With every day that goes on, you lose negotiating leverage, right? This is when the buyer starts dictating, I want inspections. They have low deposits. I want the fridge, the stove, the washer, dryer, and I want your grandmother's couch, right? This is when you start, you lose leverage and you're constantly dealing with these larger asks because, again, you've been on the market a while. So I think everyone here knows the cons. I really focus on the leveraging part because it's going to play in later. I focus on the leveraging part and the convenient for them part. The pros. What are the pros to listing at the top end of the triangle? There's only one, and it's a jug of milk. What the hell am I talking about? Stay with me.
You're this close to getting kicked out of my house here, Michael.
It's a jug
You can't price my house. You got jugs of milk. I got bags in Ontario, so this is
right. Exactly. Get bags of milk. Wow, geez. Okay, sorry. So a jug of milk, and this is the story I will tell. And I got to thank Cliff Barrett again for this one. I love it so much. And again, I'm going to say little asterisks here. If milk doesn't work for you, and it's a millennial and they don't drink milk, use a bottle of Coke, whatever it is, some sort of commodity, cup of coffee, doesn't matter. So I'll focus on the jug of milk, and I'll ask Mr. and Mrs. Seller, what's the price of milk? So I'll ask you, Mike, what's the price of milk?
$4.27 is what I buy for my bags of milk.
Okay, great. For your bag of milk. Okay, and where do you buy said bag of milk?
Usually from No Frills or Shoppers.
Okay, so No Frills Shoppers is $4.27 for a bag of milk. Okay, how much is a jug of milk or a bag of milk at 7-Eleven?
Usually, yeah, it's like $5 or $6 sometimes.
Right. So it's $6 instead of $4.27. Right. So I'll ask you again, Mike, what's the price of milk?
For me, it's $4.27.
For you, but for the next person, it's $6. Right. So what's the price? Depends. So I'll ask this: who in the right mind pays $6 for a bag of milk when you can buy it for $4.27?
The person who the store's closed and they got to go to 7-Eleven because they're desperate to get it.
They're desperate to get it, right? And so this is, so who's desperate to get it? I'll tell you who's desperate. I was desperate to get it when I was a new dad. I had babies screaming. Wife couldn't pump because she had some wine, and I had to go get out and get a jug of milk in the middle of the night. And Sobeys is closed, so where do I have to go? 7-Eleven, right? So I had to pay an exorbitant amount of money for milk because I needed it. I was desperate. I was in a jam. Are there people, I'm asking the realtors now, are there buyers out there who are desperate or who maybe are in a jam or a unique circumstance who are going to overpay for a home? Yes, right? We know that. Right. So the pro, if we're going back to, the pros and the cons here, sorry, I have to go through this again. If we're looking at the pros, the only one pro is maybe somebody buys it, right? Maybe somebody bites. Maybe the curious buyer happens to have lived on the street and they need to be close to their daycare. And this is the only one available right now on this thing, or there's some sort of sentimental value. Maybe somebody needs a jug of milk. Maybe somebody needs it. That's the only pro. Maybe somebody buys it, right? So then I move into the next zone, and this is called the competitive zone. The competitive zone, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, this is where we really fit in with a lot of what's going on in your neighborhoods and the averages based on the comparables here that I'm showing you, right? It fits in nicely with the current market in your neighborhood. Let's look at the pros and the cons of the competitive range, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. You're going to fit into the average days on market with what's going on in the neighborhood. You're probably going to get an average price per square foot. You're going to fit within the average, you should average list price to sell price ratio. These are buyers who are also going to come see it if convenient, right? If it fits, if it's convenient, they'll come show it, right? It's not completely on their schedule, but they do need some things to take, to fall into place for them to come see the home. That's why we have to expose it to the market. We do open houses, give them as many opportunities as possible to see it, right? And the negotiations are generally fair, right? There's a bit of give and take. They might ask, we might counter. There's a nice rhythm to its yin and yang. Now, what I'm saying these words average for a very specific reason, because the word average is not a very exciting word to use, right? Who wants to be just average, right? Kind of boring. And this is kind of, again, I'm trying to get them to a particular point. So I'm using the word average a lot. What's the big con with being in the competitive price zone? Right? And instead of the jug of milk, I'm going to use the purple cow. It doesn't stand out. Right? And if you want a book about on standing out, again, Seth Godin has a book called The Purple Cow, all about standing out in marketing. So that's why I chose purple cow here. But anyways, I'll say the con is your home, it fits nicely with everything. It's in with averages. The one con is it doesn't stand out because it fits with everything else, right? Then I'll look and I'll circle the compelling zone, right? And I'll say, this is the compelling zone, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. And I want to make a quick note. When you're presenting this, you need to start actually physically changing your body and your positioning, because I think everyone knows we're trying to get them closer to this zone, right? We all want a well-priced listing, right? That's going to sell. It's going to sell quick. We want that. So I want to present curious in a kind of a flippant manner. People are curious, not really caring about your home. Average, I want to present the competitive zone in a boring way. And I really want to get excited when I talk about compelling. So I want to get out of my seat a little bit. I want to perk up. I want to lean in, right? I want to tell them about the compelling, because this is the compelling zone, right? This is where your home stands out in a crowded marketplace. Let's look at the pros and cons, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. Number one, it's going to sell quickly, which is great for you because you've got 3 little kids in the home and you're not going to be able to disturb them. I'll put you up in a hotel for a couple nights and we'll get it sold. I'm just making some stuff up now, right? But it sells quickly. There's a good chance you might see multiple offers. Again, as an aside to the agents, don't say that if it's not your market. If it is, go with it, right? But Mr. and Mrs. Seller, this is when people see the house at all costs. Guess what? People look at homes. They're looking at work, right? When they're supposed to be working, that's when people are shopping at homes. They're online, they're on their phones, they're in the bathroom, whatever it is. When they see a house that's compellingly positioned in the marketplace, they see it at all costs. They call the babysitter, they book off work, they lie to their boss, whatever they need to do, they get off their ass and they come see the home, right? I'm excited about it. That's what they see it at all costs. They make it happen to come see the home. And Mr. and Mrs. Seller, the best thing about this, you have all the leverage. You dictate the size of the deposit. You dictate they're not getting grandma's couch. You dictate, I don't want that home inspection. I'm going to dictate, shorten up the timeline, shorten up, get that financing condition removed, whatever it is. You're in a position of leverage. You're in a position where you dictate the terms of this offer. And that's a great place to be. And hopefully, again, your energy is getting transferred over to them at this point, and they're getting excited about, man, I really want all that stuff. I don't want to get bossed around by the buyer. I want to be in control, right? And a great one here, as a total aside, I want to be conscious of time. The DISC system really applies here if you're talking to D's, I's, C's, or S's, you know, and what kind of one you really lean into more. D's really love having leverage, right? So what's the con, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, to the compelling zone? This is very real. It could potentially be what? I'll ask you, Mike. What's the con of a compelling zone?
Well, I could sell my house for less than I think it's worth.
Right? Maybe the fear is maybe you're leaving money on the table,
Yeah.
right? And it's not necessarily a reality, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, but there's a fear there. There's worry there. Am I going to leave money on the table? And that's totally real, right? So I will go over these 3 C's, these 3 zones, into the pros and cons, and I will ask them one of these next 2 questions, depending on how my read on the person. So it's either which zone do you feel comfortable with, or I'll ask them which zone makes the most sense for you. And why I ask those 2 different questions. The first one there, the top one, asks about feeling. Feeling comfortable. If I can get a read on the person that they're an S or an I personality type, and they need safety, they like security, it's about feelings, right? And we know the old sales adage, people buy emotionally, justify logically. So I want to know how they're feeling. If I got a hard-nosed person, or if I got a C who's analytical and data-driven, I'm going to ask them which one makes the most sense for them, right? So one of them's an emotional question, one of them's a more logical question, and you got to kind of feel out the 2, which one is better for that. If there's a husband and a wife, and they kind of get the whole gambit covered, I'll probably ask both questions. Which ones do you feel more comfortable with? Which one makes the most sense? Hopefully you can see that, right? So this is where they'll either tell you they'll either tell you which zone makes sense for them, or what happens a lot is they're going to say, well, what are the numbers in those zones? Keep in mind, I haven't even given them any numbers yet, right? But I'm educating them. I'm talking about positioning. And they're really engaged usually at this point. I've told stories and all that kind of jazz. And I just want to be conscious of time again, so I'm going to get moving a little bit. So what I'll do here, again, if they ask for the numbers, which does happen more often than not, I find they say, well, what are the numbers? And I'll have the 3 zones. Again, this is already, I've done this in pen, and I'll fill in this, the spots here. And I'm just making these numbers up. There's not a huge magic in the gaps here. It's not always 20 grand. So don't take these numbers as gospel. Again, depending if you're in a market which is always over $1 million and all that stuff, the gaps will be larger. They're not going to be 20 grand, right? There'll be 50,000 or 100,000 gaps. Who knows? So this is where you have to do your job. And in this example, in these price ranges, I typically find $10,000 to $15,000 to 20 gaps okay, but it doesn't really matter about the size of the gap. What matters is that you've given a range here. And if you can't nail this is a $40,000 price range, for crying out loud. If you can't nail this, then yeah, you really shouldn't be in the business. Back to school, right? So in this case, it's a $40,000 range, which is really safe. But I've explained what each zone looks like, and I put the numbers to it. Now, this will kind of go to the question, I believe it was Catherine who asked, what happens if you have a big disagreement here? So at this point, this is what I'll say. I am, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I am comfortable listing your home on any part of this triangle. Okay. I'll list it at 479. I'll list it at 439. I'll list it anywhere on here. I'm comfortable with that. And you've got to make sure that that's true, right? If you're blowing smoke, I don't believe in lying and blowing smoke like that. So it's got to be true, right? Now, you obviously probably don't want the curious, but if you're like, yeah, you know what? It's on the state. It might happen. Jug of milk. It could happen, right? It's a good listing. Nice, you have to weigh the pros and cons, but if it's on the triangle, you list it. If it's off the triangle, you're done. No listing. You're out the door. That's it. And it's so easy to do that because it's right in front of them. If they want, well, I was thinking my 500. If 500 ain't on my triangle, honey, like it's gone. It's not even on this paper. Where am I going to, I can't find 500 anywhere on here, right? And so, yeah, so at this point, I'll show them the numbers and I'll ask them, I'm comfortable again listing, which zone do you feel comfortable with? Again, or you could change it to knowing the numbers, which one makes the most sense for you. Right, there it is. So again, one's feeling, one's more logical. Right, I jumped ahead here. So what to do if you're too high? It's amazing what happens when you Google some words. Again, if it's off the triangle, you're out the door. I'm not listing it there, right? So hopefully that makes sense. If they choose the curious zone, this is generally what I'll do. If they say, you know what, the 479, I really like that one. We're comfortable there. It hits all of our targets. I really want to go with curious. Before I close, I'll probably try to talk them out of it a little bit one more time, and at least get the next steps underway. So I'll say at this point, I'll remind them of the cons, and I'll set expectations. So, okay, if that's the way you want to go, again, it's on my triangle. I'm cool with the triangle. Let's look at the cons. This might take a while. We're going to get some curious buyers. So here's what you need to expect, right? I need to set expectations on, you're not going to have 30 showings tomorrow. This is what's going to happen. Expect, other homes to come up in the neighborhood. Expect other ones to sell. Expect us to sit around just a little bit longer while we look for the person with the jug of milk, right? And that's generally what I'll say is, remember, the curious, Mr. and Mrs. Sorry, if we're trying to get this curious price, right, and the person with a jug of milk is going to pay for this, or the person who needs the jug of milk or the bag of milk, they're going to come quickly, right? So I'll tell them in the first 1 to 2 weeks is when, and we all know this as realtors, the first 1 or 2 weeks is the highest activity on a listing that there is. So Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if I can't find the person who needs the jug of milk, if I can't find that curious buyer in 1 to 2 weeks, we're going to have to reposition. Again, keyword, not reprice, not reduce, not lower the price, reposition. We're going to have to reposition down into a more competitive zone, right? And I have, again, the triangles right in front of me, right? And they'll say, okay, and I'll say, does that make sense? Is that fair? Because again, remember the cons. If we sit there, our offers will be in the competitive zone and we'll have lost all that leverage, right? And you don't want that. And so usually they'll agree to some sort of a game plan, right? And I will actually schedule the price reductions, right? And this is where they'll say something along the lines of, I'm going to give it 2 weeks. and here's the calendar, right? And boom, on June 27th, whatever it is, I'm going to call in. If it's not sold yet, you know what? We're going to be repositioning it this time. We're going to have that conversation. So you're setting expectations. They're not blindsided by this if they're choosing the curious zone. And by the way, I've had maybe one person choose curious. Most of the time I can get them down by this time. Hopefully that makes sense. If they choose competitive or compelling right off the bat, close it up. Like, good, you won. Like, you got a listing that's competitive, or if they choose compelling, like, boom, you're done. Great, go, close, sign it up. And then of course set expectations. Here's what's going to happen next. Here's how many showings we expect to have, etc. Again, if we hit in 2 weeks, if for some reason it's not sold, we're going to be looking at a repositioning down into more of a compelling price range. But generally speaking, if you have it at a competitive price, you should be pretty good, right? And just, I say, close it up. You could try to get them to the sweet spot, which I'm going to talk about in a second. But generally speaking, I'll just close. Okay, this is what happens, I'd say more often than not, is looking at the triangle again, if you can remember it. The sellers want the benefits, all the pros of the compelling, but they want the price of the competitive, right? They go, man, I really want all the leverage. I really want this thing to sell quickly. I really want only serious buyers, and I really want to dictate all the terms, and I want to win, and I really would like a bidding war, but and they have this fear of leaving money on the table. They want the price, the benefits of the compelling, the price of the competitive or the curious. So this is a really natural response. And so you have to completely empathize with that. If you ask the feeling question, how do you feel? You will see them actually go, and then, like, if they do that, it's because, man, I really want all the good stuff, but I don't want to leave. I want more money. And then that's usually I'll interject. I'll say, I understand. It's totally normal to feel nervous about leaving money on the table. You want to really empathize with it. This is normal. A lot of people are like this, right? This happens all the time. Remember a couple things. You're never forced to sell your home, right? This is a huge point for some sellers. If they think, if I price it compelling and I get an offer at full price, do I have to sell it? Right? And the answer to that is no, at least in our market. There's no rule. The seller, there's no gun to their head. They don't have to sell it. So my general rule though is I'll say I don't like listing at a price they won't accept. But anyways, I like to address their nervousness with reminding them no one's ever going to force you to sell your home. If you don't want to sell your home at the price, you never have to. Okay, this is where I'll point to the track record. Again, if they want that compelling, but they don't want the price, I'll point to the track record. Here's what's happened before for Mr. and Mrs. Seller A last week, last month, whatever it is. This is what happened for them. And this is a great story that I tell. I'll say Mr. and Mrs. Seller, one time, it was somebody just like you in this exact case. They took the plunge though. They listed more in the compelling zone. And what ended up happening was they got 4 offers on the house, and in 10 days they followed the marketing plan. And what happened is because of the multiple offers, there was actually a person who had the jug of milk, who needed the jug of milk, and they still had an opportunity to buy the house. So they came through and they entered into our multiple offer situation, and they overpaid by the $30,000 on the next offer. So again, I'm looking at the triangle and saying they went to the curious zone. They actually went out of my freaking triangle because we were in compelling. So just because we're in compelling doesn't mean that's where you are. Sometimes it's shot off my triangle. If I listed the home at that price, no one would have came and seen it. But because of the hype and all the environment we were able to build in the compelling zone, got them to do something silly, right? And hey, as a seller, a buyer who does something silly is a wonderful thing, right? So I'll introduce another story, and then I show them the sweet spot. If they're really still unsure, I found this works again more often than not. I show them the sweet spot, and the sweet spot is this, right? It's between competitive and compelling. If they're still unsure, you can read people, right? And I'll say, you know what? I can tell, you kind of want all the benefits of the compelling. You're worried about leaving money on the table. They'll say, yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. I'll say, tell you what, here's a sweet spot. I'll draw it out. Why don't we look at something like right in the middle of these two, 449.9 in this example. And I'll say, look at this number here. you know what, you're not leaving money on the table, but we still get a lot of the benefits of the compelling zone, right? We're still here. We're still getting a lot of traffic. There's still a really good chance of the multiple offer scenario, whatever it is. And they instantly go, okay, you know what? That looks good. And it's a total psychological thing here. And that is because in general, this is, a pricing strategy or positioning strategy that supermarkets use. It's the power of the middle, right? People will given three options. The majority of the population choose the middle, right? Because they don't want to be perceived as cheap. They don't want to pay too much. So the middle is a safe ground. So all I did here was I created a new middle, right? So instead of the middle being 459 and the competitive, I created a new middle of 449, which again, I would say this is not, I always emphasize, this is not a book of spells. I cannot cast a spell on someone and this works every single time they choose that. I find going through this process, more often than not, they like that spot. They're excited about it. They feel good about it because, hey, I'm getting the compelling. I got my number up from the agent. It wasn't 439. I didn't go to the bottom. I went up a little bit. And you get a listing at this point. And, they like that. Boom, you close. Press hard, 4 copies, honey. And you got a listing at 449 under market value. This thing's going to fly off the shelf. You got a more sellable listing, right? And so, again, I find that works more often than not. And again, I think I've addressed that every single zone on what you can do there. So a quick recap. Look, I'm right on time, Mike. We've captured attention. We've engaged the seller in the process. They feel heard. You've differentiated yourself from competitors. You've conveyed confidence and expertise. You've removed yourself at the end of the day from owning the price, right? And you haven't talked price. You've just positioned the home, right? And they chose it. They feels comfortable. And you've secured a saleable listing. So I hope that was helpful. I got a whole bunch of other little bonus tips and whatever else, but I know I'm at the hour mark here. I'll also turn it over to any questions. I know I kind of sped up a little bit at the end there, but hopefully.
I think the pace, no, I thought your pace was pretty good in that respect. I mean,
Yeah,
I'll sign. I get you don't have bags of milk. I'll sign the deal. Fine.
Yeah, gotcha.
I had, and I will invite some people. I know some people have to go. Actually, we're getting some people saying great presentation, time well spent. And I'll invite you just because we're wrapping up. Michael's actually going to be coming back next Wednesday, June 17th. That is next Wednesday, right? I'm losing.
Yeah, June 17th. Yeah, I'm back.
Moneyball for realtors. Know the numbers that actually win the game. And, in this respect, I think that's some of the, like you said, this is where you got to know your stats in there. You mentioned this is where you put your track record, right? So, you got to know the stats. You got to know your market. You got to know where you're at to know your stats and how you do.
Yeah. And so again, I breezed over a few things there. And one of them, if there's any questions coming in here, Mike, please let me know.
Yeah, well, the one question that we've gotten a few times is just people asking for a copy or an abridged copy of the slides, and I'm not too sure if.
Yeah.
Okay. Could you?
I don't mind that. Yeah, I typically do this presentation live with a whiteboard and in front of our agents and stuff. So I have to put all these slides together. I don't normally do it in this kind of a format. So, but yeah, I'm happy sharing the slides. I don't have a problem.
In terms of the triangle, you mentioned you always you have that on a paper, so you don't actually have it. Do you have it in your presentation at all? You just have it on a piece of paper?
So in my CMA package, I will have the usual stuff about me, why me, blah blah blah. Then I have the part where I have my comparable properties selected, and then I go to this page here, which is the triangle, and I talk about pricing. And I don't show sellers all these slides. That's not my style when it comes to presenting in front of the seller. I believe I'm the presentation, and the workbooks and all that are good leave behinds, but I'm the presentation. So I'll have these conversations. It's very organic. And all I have in front of me is the triangle, and I'm writing on that triangle about the curious zones and all that kind of stuff. So I don't use this slide deck. I made in the last few days for this presentation. I don't use this slide deck as my CMA.
I mean, this is why I'm asking, because I'm cautioning people to say you'll share the slides. That's cool, but perhaps that doesn't mean you just take these and throw them in your listing presentation, right? Like maybe.
Yeah, if you want to, go for it, I guess, right? It's very easy to recreate. It's really just a triangle and ovals, but
yeah,
go
but
for it.
I don't want to. I just want to take your turn. Okay.
Yeah.
I have so for all of you guys, if you loved it, like I said, a few people got to drop out. I
Yeah.
know that's always the case, but in terms of that, next Wednesday, you'll get an invite very soon in your email. Moneyball for realtors, know the numbers that actually win the game. And, I know I've learned a lot from Michael, and I do have some questions in terms of that are coming in. And I'll
Yeah.
just
I
ask.
got time, so I'm cool
Okay,
if you are.
cool. Yeah, I am. I think this is valuable. And, I love getting these questions. Um, one question came in: how would you deal with a difficult seller who wants to list unreasonably high, even after showing the seller it will not sell at that price? And I'd like to add to that. That's how do you deal with well, I'll ask you the follow-ups to that as you go through this. And that's coming from Sarah uh, Giriani from Royal LePage Signature. So yeah, how would you deal with a difficult seller? Or do you deal with them at all?
If they're off if they're off the triangle, like I just look at them and like again, I think it's happened maybe once, and I was able to get them back on the triangle. And I just said, sorry, like it's not on the triangle. I'm not listing the home at that price. You can find someone else to list it because I've given you this range. This is where we're at. If it's more than that, I don't list it. And and again, it's kind of a testament to yourself as well that if you've given in this example, $40,000 price range for crying out loud, and they want more than that, and you've given a curious zone, which is, again, when I'm giving them the zone, I mean the numbers, and it's like, hey, this might happen. So if it's beyond that, like I know it's never going to happen. So the only time I would say is unless you can set that timeline of scheduled price or repositionings of, okay, fine, you know what, you want to go off the triangle, I'm going to give you 2 weeks and we're back on the triangle, man. And we're going to go down every 2 weeks, we're going down this triangle. And if they can agree to that, okay, then maybe we'll look at it. But long story short is if they're off the triangle, I'm out of there. Find
Gotcha.
somebody else. Yeah. And you gotta be comfortable, you have to be comfortable and confident with yourself to say that.
And I mean, in that respect, because that was kind of my follow-up, is I know sometimes I've heard realtors who have gone into listing presentations and they lose it to another agent because that other agent said, oh yeah, we'll list it at this price, and the person just can't come to list it at something else.
Yeah,
And
that's
it
it's
ties
called buying a
into,
listing, right? But
yeah, and it ties into even like online valuation models and those things. I know, years ago when Zillow was in the US and realtors were losing their mind because Zillow was like, the price of your home is this.
yeah.
And so in terms of that, you're just saying, hey, like you said, if they're off your triangle, you have to have the confidence to say,
Yeah, and you have a visual right there. It's like, man, you're off the map. You're not even on the freaking page. Like it's I find it powerful. Like I don't have those numbers, right? And so one of the things I also, when those numbers are there that I put in, um, I will kind of pull them back up here just so people can see this. Uh, when I write these numbers in, I generally will go over comparables, but my comparable presentation is very quick. I'll say based on the comparables, what's going on with the averages, and I have them in a grid format, 1, 2, 3, usually 3 to 6 comps. I'm flipping through them pretty quickly and then writing these numbers down. I'm not. That's just my style. Some people really go through the comps and they go line by line, picture by picture. I just don't like doing it because it opens up a can of worms and they start comparing. Well, they have that floor looks like a little bit yellower. I just don't like it. By this time, when I'm going over this, I've really gained a lot of trust and gained, they're leading and they're engaged. They don't want to nitpick at this point, I find, but I'm it's always ready to go if I need to, but I'll typically I'll say, look, here's the range based on the comparables. Here's where I think the compelling zone is. Here's where I think the competitive is. And the curious zone is based on what's selling in your neighborhood right now. And it's always a leave behind for them. So.
and I think that comes, I mean, one of the comments, one of the questions from Debbie Trance from Royal LePage Coast Capital, I believe, out in Victoria, was saying, she said, at what point in the presentation do you explain how you came up with the price in your 3Cs pyramid? She said,
Yeah.
I wonder if the seller might be more apt to go for the curious position, given that at the beginning you say you don't know what your house is worth.
Yeah. And so, yeah. And it's really at the beginning by saying not knowing what it's worth, again, is just attacking their framework and offending, like getting their brain thinking a little bit differently. And by this time, when you've narrowed down these 3 categories, I typically find, again, most people don't choose that curious zone because the cons are so prevalent. And knowing right, you have to read the people and emphasize the cons that would matter to them. A family with 3 young kids, it's easy to say, this is what's going to happen. House sits on the market. You're getting last minute showings. You got to clean up last minute, taking after 3 kids and all that kind of stuff. If it's an investor of a vacant house, you're looking at more financial cons than those ones. And an investor might be, again, this presentation might not be suitable for absolutely everyone as far as an investor goes. They just want the bottom line, in which case you maybe go curious, and
Well,
that might be fine for the
you
investor.
might even tighten up depending on or expand it based on that too, right? Like you said, these 20 grand, these are not your hard and fast implementations.
Yeah, exactly.
And that so yeah, so Debbie said you just answered my question. Thanks.
Okay.
Um so this is an interesting question around, the COVID and all that stuff. Um, so during COVID, do you feel it is irresponsible to price too low, to bring too many people to the home in a short time frame is not safe, can't clean it well, increase risk to clients and buyers? Now that's an interesting stance. Now that's coming
Yeah.
from Annie McCants, Royal LePage, Johnston and Daniel out here in
Cool.
Toronto.
I like the question, because I'm thinking of how I want to answer it, blatantly, honestly, or with a salesman pitch. So, um, okay, first of all, you have to know a little bit, like, your market is different than everyone else's. The COVID situation is different. Winnipeg, man, we have 9, 8, 7, 8, 9 single digit active cases in the entire province. Uh, there's not a lot of fear behind that. But what I would do, if COVID's a bit more prevalent in your marketplace, is again having that discussion, entering those into the pros and cons,
True.
right? So the pros and cons is more people in your home, maybe, that goes into a con side of things in the compelling zone, right? But at the end of the day, this is about your seller and the results that matter for them. So if your seller is super COVID conscious, yeah, compelling might not be the best option, right? And so maybe you focus your attention on, because again, if you look back at one of the slides, it's not a one size fits all. Generally speaking, we would love to have people in the compelling zone, right? But maybe based on their situation, and I have had this, based on the situation, compelling might not be the best answer. It's better for us, but it might not be best for the client, in which case you have to alter your pros and cons to fit where you think might, be the best situation for that client, because that's ultimately what we're trying to do. Again, remember, position the home on the market to achieve the best results possible for them, not for you, for them.
Yeah,
So
and that ties into, I think, one of the comments that Sarah mentioned. She mentioned we've added COVID protocols and disclosure forms, but I caution you to say, I mean, in that respect, what Michael's talking about here is knowing the seller, getting the feel for them, and talking to them emotionally. If you tell the seller, well, we've added protocols and this and that and the other, they're going, okay, like, again, we're back to, like, in that respect.
exactly, yeah. So when COVID, as another story, when COVID hit, this was and it was mid-March. I guess it was towards the end of March, early April. Market was just taking it on the chin a bit, and sellers were scared, and they didn't want to list. And so what we encourage a lot of agents to do, or they had concerns about a lot of people coming into their homes, we said take exclusive listings and use the pitch instead of just saying call you when COVID's over. I said take an exclusive listing and tell them, outline the precautions you're going to take. If you find your own buyer, you'll give plenty of notice. You'll go and sanitize the house before you get there. You'll do all these things and bring home your own buyer. They sign waivers, all that kind of stuff to help alleviate the concern for the seller, because there were a lot of concerned sellers in our market at that time. So you kind of, it's all about knowing what this, really understanding the seller's position, and again, positioning what's best for them and not for best for you.
I got
Hopefully,
a great question here from Bernie Wilkinson, Royal LePage, Coast Capital in Victoria, who's saying,
hey,
how would you respond to, thank you, Michael, we need time to digest your information? I'll just say it to you. Hey, thanks, Michael. That was a great presentation. My wife and I need some time to digest the information, so I'm going to call you in 2 days.
cool. Give me a shout.
Easy as that.
Yeah, give me a shout. All good.
Here's another question we got. Could you please organize a webinar about how to put an offer on the property that is in priced too low to trigger multiple offers with the date set for accepting offers? I don't know if that's something we could. So, in the case pricing, lowballing a price, and this is the question that I have about not a Royal LePage, but we hear this from a lot of Royal LePage realtors who are dealing with other realtors who say, oh, I see they put the price in super low just to try to trigger multiple offers, and then
Yeah.
they hold back offers on a certain date. And
Yep.
she's saying, there's again a lot of those situations happening now. As a newer realtor, I'm having problems figuring out what price to offer. Is
Oh,
there rule
okay.
advice? So she's on the buying end here.
So
Now
on the
this,
buying end. Okay.
yeah. So she's saying, how do I, when I'm in that situation and I know what they've done, now she's in Mississauga,
Yeah.
so right in the greater Toronto area.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if that's
That's
something you could cover, or maybe we just.
I'll give a really quick. We do this training as well at our office, so I'll do really quick Cole's notes for time, because I can probably take 20 minutes on it, but I won't. I would say number one, talk to your broker. They might have their own strategies, but I would say generally speaking, what I advise people is really explain to the buyers multiple offers, what this means. Again, you don't know what it's going to go for, but I tell people multiple offers. Make your best offer. That doesn't mean your highest offer. It means make your best offer based on, pull comparables. Of course, I will generally give people I call it a cuckoo bar. When I was working buyers, I said, here's my cuckoo bar, like triangle, like here's off the triangle, here's my nutso bar. I wouldn't pay more for this than that. Otherwise, I can find you something better. But under the cuckoo bar, make your best offer, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, which means make it to your price and to your terms, so that if this sells outside of your price and terms, you can sleep well tonight. That's my goal, is to have you sleeping well tonight. If you get the house, you're sleeping well because you're excited. And if you don't, you're sleeping well because you didn't want to do it. It was past your cuckoo bar or whatever it is. So at least that way you have people writing their best. I will not allow them, or try not to allow them or dissuade them from playing the game, guessing. Well, 4 offers. I've had agents do anything from, well, for every offer, it's $10,000. That's ridiculous. It's stupid. Lazy. So it's make your best offer based on the comparables I provided you. Here's the cuckoo bar kind of thing. Try not to clear it. And from there, at least they're making a decision. So if they don't get it, they've made their best effort. It's the worst when they lose and they would have done more, right? They said, oh, I lost by $5,000, or I lost by this. I would have went higher if I had known. That's what that's when people get discouraged, and that's when we end up losing some buyers. They go buy their brother's house privately or whatever it is because they're discouraged. So that's really I was trying to give my goal of, I want to help you, whether we win or lose here. I was going to try to win, but do your best and see how the chips fall. And if they fall in your favor, hey, we're partying tonight. If not, we're on to the next one, because you didn't want to pay that. You didn't want to pay that for the house. And so it's still a win, right?
Yeah.
Not overpaying for a house is a win. So
yeah, and setting them up to understand that expectation. Again, that's feeling of saying, this is what's going to happen. And I get this question a lot from new agents. I always say, make sure they understand what it means if they win and what it means if they lose. If we don't win this, then like you said, we're okay, because it was at a term when you wouldn't have been comfortable with it. And here's what we do.
Yeah. The other thing we try to do from others, like strategies, if you really do have a buyer who's like, I want this house no matter what, in those cases, definitely talking to the listing agent ahead of time, finding what's important to them. You could look at writing, if they're a family and they've been there for a long time, you can look at writing compassion letters. The other option, I'm just throwing this out there, can't get too much into it. Talking to the listing agent and saying, whatever you got, counter me. Just counter me. And maybe they give you a shot of a counter that's you can close, and maybe it's not, but you can try to sweet talk the listing agent into countering you.
So to wrap this up, I'll remind you all, Michael's back here June 17th, Moneyball for Realtors. Really excited for that. I will let you know, Michael, that we have Karen Dupuis from Royal LePage State out in Hamilton, who's saying, thanks, great presentation, and she's going to use it tonight. So that's awesome to hear.
Good stuff. Hope it helps. Again, take some of it, take none of it. Do what you want with it. It's helped our agents. I got some cool bonus ones. You know what, Mike? Do you have 2 more minutes?
Bonus. I got minutes. Yeah.
All right. I just liked a couple of these ones. These ones I'll skip over. Some of you, that one takes a little while, so I'm just gonna do this one. Something you've never seen before. If you're going into if you're going into competition, generally speaking, you want to be last, right? So I'll tell the sellers this pricing positioning presentation that I use. I will tell the seller in advance, I'm going to present this in a way that you're not going to see from another agent. I promise you that. And it kind of creates a bit of intrigue. It stops them from signing with the first agent. I just like to throw that in there because they generally haven't seen this kind of presentation before. And so I leverage that on the phone, making the appointment to pique their interest. Another one, a quick little tip. When you're looking at the competitive zone with the averages, it's great to have a list of all the actives. And all the unsold properties, and tell the truth, but expand the search. If there's, I'm making this up, 30 homes for sale in the immediate range, expand the range a little bit. Include condos, duplexes, all property types, because hey, it's true, buyers, they're not always set on one single property type or one neighborhood. They're not just looking in one community, maybe they're looking in two, right? So kind of expand the search. You could use the line that Jackie Leavenworth taught was, buyers will typically look in a 5-kilometer radius. So on Matrix, you can go in there, click on one neighbor on where the house is, and then draw a circle on a 5-kilometer radius and include all the properties that are for sale in that 5-kilometer radius. And you're going to get a long list. And so when you're looking at the competitive zone, you can put that list out and say, where do you want to fit in this list? Right? Here's the 78 properties that people are looking at right now. Where do you fit? Do you want to be in the middle, or do you want to be at the top of the list? So that's kind of a bit of theatrics to add to it. As well, one little tip I had some agents do, they actually tie commission rates to this. I thought this was really interesting. And again, it's not about the numbers, but it's about, they will go, if you list at the compelling zone, it's X percentage, and it goes up as the person picks. Say, fine, you want to go curious? I'm going to need more money because I'm going to advertise this thing for the next 6 months. So that was kind of interesting.
I was curious if that, curious, of course.
Yeah.
But, I was wondering if that, because I do know that is something that, people in different offers and those kind of things come into play. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
well, I'm going to start off, and I always start off by firstly thanking everybody who's here and everybody who stayed in for the last second tips. But I want to thank everybody who's here, because if it was just Michael and I would have learned something. But in that respect, those of you who have tuned in to take this information, I love hearing it. And thanks everybody for saying the thanks. I don't know if you can see in the chat, Michael, but how many people are saying great presentation. Thanks. Awesome to hear some people willing to use it tonight, and a lot of people keen to get those slides as well. So do please send me those slides if you don't mind. And a grand merci du Québec aussi, which is awesome. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Number two, I want to thank you, Michael, so much for your time, energy, and effort. I think I was so excited. Like I said, I remember at the Services Advisory Council hearing how you speak about really something so different. And the idea of, we had a comment when you said, I can't price your house. And one person said, well, there's no way you could recover from that unless you're a real expert. And I said, hey, well, we'll grill them on that a little bit later. But at the end of the day, I didn't, because you showed that, look, part of this presentation is showing my expertise. Mm-hmm. And if you don't come in with the confidence and expertise and the knowledge you have to say that, then yeah, you're going to be in a sticky situation, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, you gotta, you can't make shocking statements without being able to really follow it up, right? If you don't have the chops to follow it up with statistics and really, again, the whole point, like it's a big setup, right? I kind of like setting people up a bit, but just having them, I want them to think. That was my biggest thing. Is I was in so many presentations where somebody's tuned out. They're like, just get to the price. I wanted people to stop and think and really get to know me and get to know my mind. And hopefully they had synergy with that. And again, it seemed to work out really well. And our agents in our office who use this love it, and they're getting more listings as well. So.
Well, we often talk about differentiating in the market and how do you stand out? And the way you stand out is by being open and honest, because you're right. Like you said, the scenarios you gave, bag of milk, jug of milk, but that's true, right? That's the way it is. That is 100%. Like I said, I've been there too. I've been to the store and been like, oh my God, they don't have milk. I need milk now, And so, yeah, I was like, man, I guess I'll bite the bullet and I'll buy more expensive things. So thank you so much, Michael, for your time, energy, and effort. I look forward to June 17th. I don't know if I'll be the one hosting it, but either way, I'll be tuning in. So thank you so much. And we'll see everybody again next week.
Sounds good. Thanks all. Take care.
Have a great day, everybody.